Life has a way of etching memories into the very essence of our homes, and the house I grew up in with Ellie was a mosaic of every laughter, filled chase, every tear, shedding comfort, and every wide-eyed bedtime story. Our mother was a gentle whisper in the wind, a figure we knew only through faded photographs and Dad's tender recollections. "You both have her spirit," Dad would say, his eyes gleaming with a mix of joy and an ache that never quite faded. "Your laughter is her legacy." Ellie, with her rambunctious energy, was the first to break any silence. "Kate, race you to the creek. Last one, there is a rotten egg." I would chase after her, my more cautious nature always a step behind her fearless strides. Our laughter would mingle with the rustling leaves as if to fill the spaces our mother left behind. In the evenings, when the world outside our little home turned to shades of twilight, Dad would become our anchor in the realms of imagination, his voice a soothing balm against the encroaching night. "Dad, tell us the story of the knight and the dragon again," Ellie would plead, her eyes wide with the wonder of a child who believes in the magic of stories. "And don't leave out any details," I'd chime in, always hungry for the richness of the tale, the depth of the lore. Settling into his well-worn armchair, Dad would begin. "Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a brave knight who was as kind as she was strong." His voice would weave the tale as if spinning gold from straw, and we hung on every word. "But what if the dragon didn't want to fight, Dad?" I'd ask, my mind always searching for the heart of the story. "Ah, Kate, that's the beauty of it," Dad would say with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the monsters we fear are just waiting for someone to understand them." Life with Ellie and Dad was an intricate dance of joy and learning, of growth and understanding. We were a trio, a perfect circle of support and love, even as the shadow of our mother's absence lingered. But it was Dad's unwavering presence that taught us the strength of family, the resilience of love, and the power of a good story to heal the unseen wounds. As we grew, the bond between Ellie and me, fostered by our father's dedication, became the unspoken foundation upon which we stood. It was an unbreakable vow, a promise of sisterhood that I believed time and fate would never dare challenge. Little did I know, the coming years would test the very fabric of that bond, stretching it to its limits and revealing truths I never expected to face. The shift in our lives began subtly, like the first cool whisper of autumn that warns of the winter to come. Dad had always been a force of nature, his vitality the sun in our shared sky, but as the days grew shorter, so too did his strides. A persistent cough, a tiredness in his eyes, a slowness in his step. These were the harbingers of the storm that was about to break over our small family. "Dad, you should see a doctor," I urged one evening as he struggled clear his throat, the sound harsh and grating. He waved me off with a weak smile. "It's just a little cold, Kate. Don't fuss." But Ellie, who'd been quieter these days, her usual spark dimmed by worry, chimed in. "Kate's right. You've been saying that for weeks now. Please, just go." The reluctance in Dad's face was clear, but faced with our united front, he relented. All right. If it'll make you two stop your worrying, I'll go." The diagnosis came like a bolt from the blue. The words chronic illnesses, a cruel sentence, passed down without appeal. Visits to the hospital became our new routine, replacing afternoons at the creek and evenings of storytelling. The sterile smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the comforting scent of Dad's old leather chair. "Girls, I need you to be strong," Dad said during one such visit, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I need to know you'll look after each other." We clung to his hands, the lifelines on his palms etched deep with the hard work of raising us alone. "We will, Dad." "Always," I promised, the weight of his request anchoring me to a reality I wasn't ready to face. Ellie, with tears brimming in her eyes, nodded vehemently. "You've got nothing to worry about. We're Harrisons. We stick together." Yet, as the illness took its toll, the man who had been our protector, our guide, began to fade before our eyes, his body becoming a prison from which there was no escape. The invincible hero of our childhood was showing signs of mortality, and with each passing day, the unspoken fear grew within us. The fear of the inevitable, the fear of what would come after. During those long hospital nights, Ellie and I would huddle together in the dim light of the waiting room, our whispered conversations a feeble attempt to ward off the darkness that loomed ahead. Kate, what are we going to do? Ellie's voice would crack, her vibrant spirit quelled by the looming loss. We'll do what we have to, Ellie. We'll get through this together, just like we always have, I'd respond, though my heart trembled with uncertainty. But it was in those moments, with the storm clouds gathering, that I saw the first fissures in the bedrock of our sisterhood. Where once there had been unity, a silent rift was forming, a precursor to the chasm that would soon divide us. The day the will was read, a somber silence had settled over the lawyer's office, as if the room itself mourned the man it had lost. Ellie and I sat side by side, yet the space between us felt like a chasm, filled with unspoken fears and the unsaid words that had accumulated in the sterile silence of hospital corridors. "Mrs. Harrison! Miss Harrison!" The lawyer began, adjusting his glasses with a solemnity befitting the occasion. "Your father was a man of clear intentions. He wanted to ensure that both of you were taken care of." Ellie, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her dress, shot me a quick, nervous glance. I returned it with a weak smile, trying to draw on a reservoir of strength that felt dangerously close to empty. As the lawyer read on, it became painfully apparent that Ellie had been left with the lion's share of Dad's assets, the investment accounts, the savings, even the family car. I was stunned, a single question ricocheting through my mind. How? "Wait, that can't be right," I interrupted, my voice unsteady. "Dad wouldn't." Ellie cut me off, her voice suddenly cold and sharp as a shard of ice. "Oh, but it is, Kate. Dad and I, we had an understanding." The lawyer cleared his throat, uncomfortable. Mr. Harrison made these changes to his will shortly before his passing. Everything is in order. I could only stare in disbelief. The father who had taught us about fairness, who had spent every day of our lives ensuring we felt equally loved, had seemingly cast me aside, or so it appeared. Ellie leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper meant only for me. "You always thought you were the favorite, didn't you, Kate? The good daughter? Well, looks like I won in the end." I felt the blood drain from my face, the room spinning as the implications of her words sank in. You manipulated him," I accused, my voice a ragged whisper, betrayal slicing through the fog of my grief. Her laughter was a sound I'd never heard from her before, cruel and mocking. "Okay, wake up. Dad's gone and I have what I deserve. Besides, you got the house. Isn't that enough for the saintly Kate?" The old house, as it was referred to in the will, was the place where our happiest memories as a family resided. It was Dad's legacy, but in that moment, it felt like a consolation prize. "I don't understand, Ellie. How could you do this to Dad? To us?" The plea in my voice was met with a shrug of her elegantly dressed shoulders. "Life's about taking what you want, Kate. You, of all people, should know that," she retorted, her eyes glinting with a triumph that made my stomach churn. The drive to the old house was a blur, my mind grappling with the day's revelations. The home that once echoed with laughter now seemed to whisper secrets of betrayal. As I turned the key in the lock, the weight of the truth settled on my shoulders. Ellie, my sister, my lifelong companion, had become a stranger, and our father's last will had drawn the line that divided us. It was a line I wasn't sure could ever be crossed again. The old house stood defiant against the march of time, its walls a testament to the countless memories that had unfolded within. The moment I stepped inside, nostalgia hit me like a wave, each room whispering tales of yesteryears. Dad's hearty laughter echoing down the hall, Ellie's and my footsteps thudding on the wooden stairs, our giggles hiding in the corners. I walked through each room, my fingers tracing over surfaces dulled by dust, the air heavy with silence. It was in the living room that I decided to start. The walls needed a fresh coat of paint, the floorboards cried out for polish, and the windows begged to let light in once again. Days turned into nights, and I toiled alone, my hands moving with purpose, driven by a desire to restore not just the house, but some semblance of order to my life. As I worked, I spoke to the walls, to the shadows, to Dad. "See, Dad, I'm taking care of it, just like you would have wanted," I muttered to myself, or perhaps to him, as I stripped away layers of old wallpaper. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a glint of something caught my eye. It was tucked away behind a loose baseboard in the corner of Dad's study, a place where Ellie and I were forbidden to play as children. With tentative fingers, I pried it open to reveal an envelope, yellowed with age but sealed, my name written in Dad's familiar script. Curiosity piqued and heart pounding, I opened the envelope with a reverence usually reserved for sacred things. Inside, a letter, and as I unfolded it, Dad's voice seemed to fill the room. "Kate, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and things have gone as I feared they might," the letter began. My hands trembled as I held the paper, each word a balm and a blade to my grieving heart. I knew Ellie. She has her mother's charm and her father's cunning, but none of the restraint. I've seen how she's been, even if you haven't. I couldn't leave you with nothing, my wise girl. The letter revealed an account, a hidden stash that Dad had set aside, just for me. It was as if he had reached across the expanse of death to give me a final, fatherly nod of protection. Dad! The word was a whisper, a thank you, a cry of relief, all at once. I sat on the floor of Dad's study for a long time, the letter clutched to my chest, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just about the money. It was the realization that Dad had known me, had understood and anticipated the storm that would come, and in his infinite love had prepared a lifeline for me to grasp. The following morning, with the letter tucked safely in my bag, I went to the bank. The manager, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, ushered me into her office with a solemnity that matched the occasion. "You're Mr. Harrison's daughter?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yes, I am. He mentioned an account in his letter," I said, sliding the envelope across the desk to her. She read the letter, her expression turning to one of understanding and then to respect. "Your father was a wise man. He set up a trust that's been accruing interest for years. It's substantial." "How substantial?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. She wrote down a figure and turned it toward me. $1 million. The number was a lifeline, a new beginning, a chance to rebuild not just the old house, but my entire world. With the money, the house's transformation was no longer just a possibility, but a certainty. The business I'd dreamed of was within reach, and the weight of Ellie's betrayal, while not forgotten, became a lighter burden to bear. I could move forward with or without her. Dad had seen to that. The revelation of the hidden account was a pivotal moment, a shift in the winds that had so long blown against me. Armed with the knowledge of my newfound wealth, I started to see the old house, not as a monument to a past filled with loss and betrayal, but as the foundation of a new beginning, a stronghold for the future. Each day brought transformation. The walls, once drab and peeling, became vibrant with fresh paint. The floors, scuffed and worn by the pitter-patter of our childhood adventures, now shone with the sheen of polished wood. The rooms, which had echoed with our laughter and Dad's loving voice, were once again filled with sounds. This time of hammers, saws, and the busy chatter of workers. As the house took on a new life, so did I. I invested in my passion for design, launching a small interior decorating business. The first client was, quite fittingly, myself. The house was my canvas, my showcase, and the heart of my portfolio. One afternoon, while surveying the progress, my phone buzzed, breaking through the hum of productivity. The screen flashed Ellie's name, and a familiar sense of dread coiled in my stomach. "What do you want, Ellie?" I asked, my voice cool, detached. "Kate, I heard about the money." "Dad's money?" Ellie's voice came through, tinged with a barely contained greed. "We need to talk. It's not fair that you get all of it." I let out a humorless laugh. "Fair? You swindled almost everything from the will, and now you talk to me about fair?" There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was edged with desperation. "But I need it, Kate. I've made some investments, and they haven't panned out. I'm entitled to half of whatever you got." I could feel the old anger rising, but it was quickly quelled by a newfound resolve. Entitled? You were entitled to what Dad left you, and you've had that. This money is mine, Ellie. He left it for me, not us. Her response was a hiss of frustration. "You can't just—" "I can and I will," I cut her off. "I suggest you figure out your own finances." As I hung up, I felt a wave of empowerment. For so long, I had been the one trailing behind, the one caught off guard, but not anymore. The tables had turned, and with them, my fortune. Word of my windfall and burgeoning business spread through our small community. Clients began to seek me out, drawn by the transformation of the Harrison house and the story behind it. With every successful project, my confidence grew, as did my business. Then came the day Ellie showed up on my doorstep. her eyes wild with fury and defeat. "You can't cut me off, Kate. I'm your sister." I met her gaze, my own eyes steady. I cut off someone who betrayed me, who hurt me for her own gain. "You made your choices, Ellie, and now you live with them." She took a step forward, her hands clenched at her sides. "I'll fight you for it. I'll get lawyers. Dad wouldn't have wanted this." I shook my head, sadness mingling with the lingering bitterness. "Dad wanted me to be secure, to be happy. He knew you better than you think. As for lawyers, go ahead. The money is legally mine, and you have no claim to it." Defeated, Ellie turned away, her shoulders slumped, the fight gone as quickly as it had flared. And as she walked away, I felt the final thread of our sisterly bond fray and snap, the last remnant of what we had been to each other disappearing into the crisp air. Ellie's envy simmered beneath a facade of forced cordiality for weeks, following the revelation of my inheritance. Her sporadic attempts to reach out, laden with thinly veiled acquisitiveness, were met with my growing indifference. Yet, nothing could have prepared me for the confrontation that unfolded on an unremarkable Tuesday that felt like a reckoning of sorts. I was in the midst of choosing fabric samples for a client when Ellie stormed into my newly renovated home office, her face a tempest of rage and resentment. "Kate, how could you keep this from me?" she demanded, slamming a pile of bills on my desk, the paper sliding over the polished surface like debris in her emotional wake. I straightened, meeting her gaze with a calm I didn't feel. "Keep what from you, Ellie? The fact that Dad left me something to secure my future." Her laugh was bitter, a sharp note that clashed with the harmonious space I had created. "Secure your future. What about me, Kate? We're supposed to be in this together." "Supposed to be," I echoed, the weight of those words heavy with the gravity of her betrayal. "We were supposed to share everything, remember? You changed that when you decided to take nearly everything in the will." She paced the room, her movements erratic. "I made mistakes, okay. I've lost most of it. But you sit here in this palace living like a queen?" I sighed, my patience fraying. A palace built on hard work and Dad's foresight. "Ellie, you had your share. What you did with it is not my responsibility." Her voice cracked with desperation. "I need help, Kate. The money's gone. I have nothing." I stood, my resolve hardening like the wood of the antique desk between us. "You chose to gamble with what Dad gave you, Ellie. I chose to invest and build something lasting. Our paths diverged the moment you decided to manipulate his will." Ellie's eyes were wild, her composure shattered like glass. "I'm your sister. Does that mean nothing to you?" "You were my sister when you lied to Dad on his deathbed," I shot back. "You were my sister when you looked me in the eyes, knowing you had cheated me. You're still my sister, Ellie, but that doesn't give you the right to my life's work or Dad's gift to me." She stumbled back as if struck, the fight draining from her posture. "Kate, please." I took a deep breath, the air in the room feeling suddenly too thin. "Ellie, I can't help you. Not this time. It's time for you to stand on your own, just like I had to." As she left, the door closing with a quiet click behind her, I felt the finality of our exchange. The sister I had grown up with, the one who shared whispered secrets and dreams in the dark, had been consumed by greed. In its place stood a stranger, shaped by choices and avarice I could no longer comprehend or condone. The true face of greed had shown itself, not as a monster lurking in the shadows, but as a familiar presence seated across from me at the dinner table. It was a visage more heartbreaking than any mythical beast, for it bore the eyes of my sister, the companion of my childhood, now lost to the allure of wealth and the bitterness of envy. The weeks following Ellie's departure were suffused with a quietude that was both soothing and unsettling. I threw myself into my work, my business blooming with the same tenacity as the roses in Dad's cherished garden. Yet, the specter of my sister's greed lingered, a shadow over my newfound peace. As the days lengthened into summer, the business I had nurtured began to thrive, its roots reaching deep into the community. Word of mouth had turned my once tentative dream into a sought-after reality. I found solace in the hum of daily life, in the swatches of fabric and the strokes of paintbrushes that brought joy to my clients' homes. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with strokes of crimson and gold, a knock came at the door. I answered it to find Ellie standing there, not with the fury of our last encounter, but with a quietude that was unfamiliar. "Kate, may I come in? Her voice was timid, a stark contrast to the bombast of her last visit. I hesitated but stepped aside, allowing her entrance into the home she had once ridiculed. She looked around, taking in the transformation with an unreadable expression. "It's beautiful," she said finally. "What you've done with the place." I nodded, wary of her praise. "Thank you. It's been a lot of hard work." Ellie sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of her regrets. "I can see that. Her words hung between us, as heavy and tangible as the summer air. "Apologies don't change the past, Ellie." "No, they don't," she agreed, her gaze dropping to the floor. I considered her, the sister I had loved and lost to greed. "Because I've hit rock bottom, Kate. I've seen what my actions have done, to you, to me, to the memory of our father." Her eyes met mine, and I saw the glimmer of the girl she once was. "I don't want your money, Kate," Ellie continued, her voice firm. "I've started working, really working, for the first time in my life. I'm trying to make things right, on my own." I felt a thaw in the ice that had encased my heart. "That's good to hear, Ellie. I'm glad for you." She took a step forward, a tentative smile playing on her lips. "And I wanted to ask for your forgiveness, not for the money, not for any help, but for breaking the bond we had." I searched her face, looking for the sincerity that had been absent in our past encounters. Finding it, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Forgiveness isn't easy, Ellie. It will take time," I said, my own voice trembling with the weight of emotion. "I know, and I'm willing to wait, to prove to you that I'm still the sister you grew up with," she replied, a hopeful note in her voice. As Ellie left that evening, the door closing softly behind her, I felt a sense of closure. I had stood my ground, protected what was rightfully mine, and in doing so, I had found the sweetest revenge, not through retaliation or spite, but through success and self-assurance in the life I was building. My revenge was not in the form of a war waged or a battle fought, but in the quiet affirmation that integrity and strength could overcome even the deepest of betrayals. It was in the knowledge that while I could not control the actions of others, I could steer my own course, remain true to myself, and to the memory of the father who had taught me so much. And perhaps, in the fullness of time, the rift between Ellie and me would heal, not into the seamless bond of childhood, but into something new, something tempered by life's trials and resilient in its reformation. For now, I had my work, my home, and the legacy of a father's love that no amount